She knew something about him wasn't right, but she couldn't stop watching him. He was too quiet, too careful, like he was hiding a life no one was meant to see. And somehow, she felt like she was already part of it. Zara did not mind her business. She never had. She ran the neighborhood group chat, knew every car that parked on the block for longer than 30 minutes, and had once predicted a pregnancy before the couple told a single soul. Zara had radar. The moving truck appeared at 7:43. She knew because she'd been at her window since 7, coffee going cold in her hand, watching. He came out of the truck cab first, then started carrying boxes. Alone. Also, and Zara would admit this only to herself, absolutely stunning. He moved like someone who didn't need anyone watching him and had no idea, or didn't care, that everyone was. Zara stood at her window for 11 minutes. She only knew because she looked at the clock when she finally remembered her coffee. It was cold. She felt personally wronged by this. She opened the group chat and typed new neighbor. White man, very built. Says nothing. Somebody find out something. Kezia replied in under a minute. Then, girl, what did you already do? Zara put her phone down. She had done nothing. She was simply observing. She brought a welcome plate at noon. Her mother's cornbread, greens, and a piece of pound cake wrapped separately because you don't put pound cake next to greens and call yourself civilized. She knocked. He opened the door. He was in a plain gray shirt, and his expression was the same as when he'd been carrying boxes. Present, composed, giving away nothing at all. He looked at her. Then the plate. Then her again. Thank you. Low voice. Careful. Like every word got considered before it was released. He took the plate, did not invite her in, did not ask her name, looked at her one moment longer with those gray-green eyes, and then the door closed. Zara stood on his porch for 3 full seconds. She went directly to Kezia's door. He is definitely hiding something. You were over there for 4 minutes. I know what I saw. Over the following week, she built her case. Unusual hours. Gone before 5. Back at varying times with no pattern, which in Zara's worldview meant the pattern was being deliberately hidden. Black duffel bags in and out on different days. A man who sat in a parked car outside for 20 minutes without ever knocking and then simply left. A phone call through her open window 3 minutes. Clipped and controlled. Something under the surface that wasn't calm at all. She presented all of it to Kezia on a Saturday afternoon, organized on her notes app by category. Or, Kezia said carefully, he works early, carries gym stuff, has a weird friend, and got a bad phone call. Zara looked at her. The welcome plate came back washed, stacked, with a dish towel folded on top. Kezia paused. That's actually a little strange. Nobody normal does that, Kezia. What Zara didn't know was that Damon had clocked her on day 2. He was professionally trained to notice surveillance. He could spot a tail in traffic and read a room for threat level in under 40 seconds. None of that had prepared him for a woman crouching behind a recycling bin in broad daylight to watch him check his mail. He went inside, stood at his window, spent a full minute deciding if this constituted a threat to his operation. It did not. What it constituted was considerably more dangerous. She was warm in the way a neighborhood builds itself around. The kind of woman people called first. He was supposed to be invisible. Keeping his cover, watching his actual target 2 houses down, keeping his head down. He was very disciplined about all of it. He still checked for her porch light every night before he went to sleep. She sprained her ankle trying to see over his fence. She had 4 grocery bags cutting into both hands, and she was limping back to her house when he simply appeared. No greeting, no fuss. and took every bag without a word. He had seen her surveilling him and heard her whimper after the sprain. "I'm fine," she said. He was already walking toward her front door. He carried everything to her kitchen, set it all down, turned to her with that same neutral expression. "Which cabinet?" Not a question. The question had already been answered inside his head. He just needed the location. She pointed. He put everything away in an order that was somehow already logical, folded the empty bags, and left. 4 minutes. Maybe less. Zara stood in her kitchen with her sprained ankle and her put-away groceries and said out loud to no one, "That is not normal behavior." The first bag appeared on her doorstep on a Wednesday. Brown paper, folded at the top. 2 croissants, still warm. No note. She assumed it was a mistake and ate both while deciding whose they were. They were the best things she'd put in her mouth in recent memory, and she resented this. Saturday, 4 croissants and a small jar tucked beside them. She opened it. Fig and vanilla and something warm she couldn't name. Homemade. That was homemade jam. She went across the street. He opened the door before she finished knocking. "This was on my doorstep." "I know." "You left it." "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her. The morning light was doing something entirely unfair to his face. "You looked like you'd like it." Simple. Factual. Like it was obvious, and he couldn't understand why she was asking. Zara opened her mouth, closed it, nodded once, and walked back across the street. She sat on her couch, held the jar in both hands, had a very firm conversation with herself about her feelings. Her feelings did not move an inch. She found his bakery 3 blocks over, the kind of place that had been there long enough to belong without trying. Warm light, butter and brown sugar and yeast layered into the air like it lived there. She was looking at the display case when movement behind the counter caught her eye. He was in an apron, sleeves rolled, a streak of chocolate on his forearm, carrying a tray from the back. He looked up at the exact moment she looked at him. Something moved across his face, quick and unguarded, like a door opening and closing before she could see what was behind it. "Hi," she said. "Brilliant." "Hi," he said. Waited. "I'll have the croissant." She paid. She left. She made it half a block before she stopped on the sidewalk. I didn't even ask his name. After that, things accumulated the way they do when 2 people are both paying attention, and neither is ready to say so. She came home one Thursday to find her flickering porch light fixed new bulb, steady light, no note. His car in the driveway across the street. She left a plate on his doorstep the following Wednesday. Not for any reason. Just because. It came back the next morning, washed, dish towel folded on top, with a note tucked underneath. "Thank you. The plantains especially." She read it 3 times on her porch. On a Sunday evening, she walked over and sat beside him on his front steps, and she still isn't sure why. He made room without comment. They sat in silence for a while, and it didn't bother her, which surprised her more than anything else about him. They talked eventually. The bakery, his grandmother who taught him, and was ruthless about it. Her family's Thanksgiving argument about whether cornbread should have sugar in it. The year her cousin made a healthy version, and the collective grief that followed. He laughed. Low and brief, barely there, but real. She felt it in the middle of her chest, like a note being struck. She checked her phone at some point, and it was past 10. She stood, said she'd see him around, and walked back across the street feeling like the sidewalk had a slight tilt to it. Kezia was calling before she reached her door. "Don't. You like him." "Good night, Kezia." She lay in the dark that night, thinking about the way he laughed. Told herself she was going to be very sensible about all of this. She was not going to be sensible about any of this. Everyone on the block knew Terrence was wrong. Nobody could prove it. which was the specific kind of frustrating that makes a neighborhood go quiet when certain names come up. Too clean car. Too smooth smile that never reached the eyes. A way of knowing things about people's situations that he had no business knowing. When Kezia called to say he'd been showing up at a young woman's door over a debt. Louder each time, less polite each time. Zara got her purse. What are you going to do? Talk to him. Zara. The door was already closed. She found him in the corner store parking lot. She walked up straight-shouldered and clear-voiced and told him she knew what he'd been doing, that the girl had people looking out for her now, and that the debt was going away one way or another. He let her finish. Then he looked at her, and the smooth smile was gone, and what was underneath it was flat and cold, and not the neighbor she'd seen at cookouts. You should go home, Zara. Quiet. Precise. The kind of voice that doesn't need to be raised. The cold came through her chest fast. She had miscalculated. She'd walked in with the confidence of a woman who could talk her way through most things, and she was standing in a parking lot at 4:30 in the afternoon, understanding, too late, that this was not most things. She kept her face even. She was not going to let him see it. Damon had been 2.5 blocks behind her since she left her house. He'd seen her leave from his window. Purse, that walk, that particular set to her shoulders he'd come to recognize as I have decided something. And he was out his door in under a minute. He kept his distance the way he'd been trained to, invisible without being absent, and rounded the corner of the parking lot to find her 3 feet from Terrence, with that look on Terrence's face. He walked in. No hurry. Bakery bag in hand, because he had been, in fact, 2.5 blocks behind her on his way back from the bakery, and hadn't had time to put it down. He came up beside her, put himself slightly between them in a way that looked accidental and wasn't, and looked at Terrence with the particular blankness of a man holding every card at the table, who doesn't need to show a single one. Hey, he said to Zara, easy and warm, like he'd spotted her across a parking lot by chance. There you are. He looked at Terrence. Something passed between them in that half-second. A mutual recognition that had nothing to do with being neighbors. Thanks for keeping my girlfriend company. Her brothers are meeting us here in about 4 minutes, so we won't keep you. Terrence looked at him. Damon looked back. The bakery bag crinkled softly in the silence. I can't believe such a feisty woman got herself a boyfriend, he whispered with irritation. What did you just say? Zara shouted, almost jumping on him. Damon held her down just in time, and Terrence got agitated. You sure are one troublesome woman, Zara. Now you don't talk to her like that. Damon quickly stepped between them, pointing the bakery bag at his face. And what will you do about it? He asked, raising his eyebrow towards the bag. Beat me up with a bakery bag? He almost smiled. I don't have your time, man, but I sure will see you later. He got in his car and left. Zara waited until the car turned the corner. That's your girlfriend? She screamed, turning on him with her whole body. And I have brothers now? I am an only child. It worked, he said, already walking. It worked because you said it like, do you want to walk or keep standing in this parking lot? She made a sound of profound outrage and fell into step beside him. She talked the entire 4 blocks home. He said almost nothing. The bakery bag crinkled with every step. She was furious, and she was also beneath it, still shaking from what had been in Terrence's eyes, and Damon walked close enough that their arms almost touched, and she felt steadier for it, and was absolutely not going to say so. He walked her to her door. She stopped on the porch and looked at him. Are you going to explain any of that? No. A pause. Are you okay? Not the words. The way he asked. Eyes on her face, fully present, waiting. I'm fine, she said. quieter than she'd said anything in the last 20 minutes. He held out the bakery bag. She took it. He went back across the street, and she watched him go longer than she meant to. Inside the bag, 2 croissants and a note. Don't do that again. She put the note on her counter and stood there, looking at it. 2 nights later, Terrence came back. Not alone. 3 men, 2 cars, 9:30, parked on the block with a visibility that was itself a message. Zara called Kezia first. Stay inside. Lock your door. Then called 911, voice steady, and went to her window. Damon came out of his house. Not running. Not loud. Just out. Crossing the street toward the cars with a certainty that completely reorganized the atmosphere of everything. The men went still. He said something she couldn't hear. One of them started to move angrily towards him, and he fought him off with ease. She had been told to stay inside. She stayed inside for most of it. She was standing in the street when it was over, because she was Zara and she had her limits. He called the cops, then came straight to her through all the movement and the radios and the people. Didn't look anywhere else first. Just came, and put his arms around her. She pressed her face into his chest and held on and felt his heartbeat under her hand. It wasn't as steady as he looked. That was what finally made her eyes sting. They sat on her porch steps that night until the street went quiet. She didn't ask everything she wanted to ask. Just one thing. Who are you? He was quiet a moment. Then, one of the good guys. That's all I can give you right now. The bakery is mine. That's real. Everything you felt. That's real. She looked at him for a long time. Then she leaned her shoulder into his, and he didn't move away, and they sat there in the easy dark, and she let it be enough. She went to sleep that night, not knowing it was the last night he'd be there. Thursday morning. She opened her front door for the paper and looked across the street from habit. His car was gone. Not just stepped out, gone. Gone. The driveway empty in a way that had a finality to it. The porch light he'd fixed was still on. She knocked on his door anyway. Nobody answered. She went to the bakery. A girl she'd seen once before was behind the counter. Zara asked for Damon. The girl looked at her with a professionally blank expression and said she didn't know anyone by that name. Zara walked home, sat on her couch, stared at nothing. There had been no goodbye, no note, no warning. One night his shoulder was warm against hers, and she could feel his heartbeat. And the next morning he was simply gone, not a dramatic vanishing. Just an absence where something had been. She didn't know if he was safe. She didn't know if she had meant anything. She thought about don't do that again. She thought about, are you okay with his eyes on her face? She thought about his heartbeat not being as steady as he looked. She decided it had been real. She had to decide that. The alternative was unbearable. She kept living. Because she was Zara, and she didn't stop. But things were different in the small ways that add up. She stopped cataloging new arrivals. She ran the group chat with the same energy on the surface, and Kezia, who knew her better than anyone, heard the distance under it and said nothing. She went back to the bakery after 2 weeks, sat at the counter, ordered his croissant, cried quietly into her coffee for about 4 minutes, while the girl behind the counter refilled it without looking at her directly. She was grateful for that small human kindness more than she could explain. The porch light across the street stayed on through all of it. Every night. She noticed every night. She didn't let herself wonder why he'd left it burning. She just saw it on the way to bed and held on to it, because it was the smallest possible thing and it was all she had. 6 weeks is not a long time. Long enough, though, to learn what a particular absence feels like at different hours. She had stopped waiting. Not given up, she understood the difference. She had just uncurled her hand from it. Let it go. She was okay. Wednesday morning in August. No particular reason to expect anything. She woke up, made coffee, went to the front door for the paper. She opened it. He was sitting on her porch steps. Not the guarded, undercover stillness of before. Just him. In a plain shirt, in the morning light, looking like a man who had traveled a long way to be exactly here. He was holding a bakery box. He looked up when the door opened, and his face did the thing it had done that morning in the bakery. The quick, unguarded opening. Except this time it didn't close. She didn't think. She stepped off the porch. She didn't know who moved first. Her arms were around his neck, and her mouth was on his, before a word passed between them, before a single, sensible thought could intervene, and for a moment the whole street and the whole 6 weeks collapsed into the warm, immediate truth of it. He went still for half a second. Genuine surprise, the first time she'd ever caught him off guard. And then his arms came around her, and he kissed her back like he'd been counting the days. Because he had been counting the days. She surfaced first, came back to herself. The street, the morning, her pajamas, the complete absence of any preamble to what had just happened. She pulled back, hands still in his jacket. "I'm sorry, I don't know why I just—" He cupped her face in both hands and brought her back. And this kiss was slower, deliberate, warm in a way that felt like everything he hadn't said across 6 weeks of silence. When they finally separated, she was still gripping his jacket. He was looking at her with that open, undone expression she'd only ever glimpsed in pieces before. It had finally found its way out and didn't see the point in going back. "Hi?" she said. "Hi. Hi?" he said. She laughed. It came out a little watery. She pressed her forehead to his collarbone for a moment, and he held still and let her. Then she pulled back and looked at him and asked what she needed to ask. "You left without telling me." "I know. No goodbye. No note. I knocked on your door. I went to the bakery, and they said they didn't know your name." "I know," he said, quieter. Something moved through his face. The night everything happened. My cover was compromised. I had to move before certain people could connect me to this neighborhood. And I couldn't say goodbye because I was already being watched in those last hours. And if anyone saw me— He stopped. "You would have become leverage. The people we were dealing with don't hesitate to use what matters to someone." A pause. Then, looking directly at her, "I couldn't let that happen." She understood. All of it, the silence, the no-note, the girl at the counter who didn't know his name. Every piece of it had been protection. All of it had been him doing the only thing available to keep her safe. "You're one of the good guys." "Yes. Can't say who specifically. No. But it's over. Closed and done." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked down at the bakery box still somehow in his hand through all of this. "You owe me 6 weeks of croissants." And he laughed, the real version, full and warm and completely unguarded, the one she'd been hearing pieces of for months, and she decided she was going to spend a very long time making sure she heard it as often as possible. She took the box from his hands. "Did you put extra butter on these?" "Obviously." "Then get in here," she said, and stepped back and opened the door, and he followed her inside. He was done with the case. He'd put in for a permanent transfer to the local office. His supervisor called it irregular, and Damon called it non-negotiable. He moved back across the street within the week. The group chat produced what Zara later described as its finest hour. Kezia sent 37 consecutive emojis. Zara stood on her porch, watching him carry boxes, and when he looked up and caught her, he always caught her. He didn't look away this time. Just smiled, slow and warm and only for her. She picked up her phone, opened the group chat. Typed, "He's back. Mind your business." Then crossed the street to help him unpack. The weeks after were quiet in the best way. Mornings at his kitchen counter while something baked. Evenings on the porch steps. His hand at the small of her back at the block cookout while Kezia pretended not to notice and visibly noticed. She was happy. The specific kind that doesn't announce itself. Just settles in, steady and warm and real. Like something that was always supposed to be here. She found the file on a Wednesday morning. He was on a call in the other room. She reached for a notepad on the counter, moved it, and found a folder underneath. She was not going to open it. That was true for approximately 3 seconds. Most of it was redacted. Thick black bars through entire paragraphs, names and locations erased into official silence. But what remained? The letterhead, the operation title, the classification markings. Told a story considerably larger than anything he'd given her. Her eyes went wide. She looked up. He was in the doorway, coffee in one hand, phone call finished, looking at her with the expression of a man registering a tactical error. "You were a CTULLY." He crossed the kitchen in 4 steps, gently took the folder from her hands, closed it, and put it in the cabinet above the refrigerator. She noted this location. He picked up a croissant from the counter and held it out to her. Looked at her with complete, unhurried calm. She took it. Narrowed her eyes. Took a bite. "We are going to talk about this." "I know," he said, and kissed her temple, warm and easy. The way he did everything. She did not let it go. Not that morning. Not that week. Not for the next 40 years. She didn't need to. She had time.